In 26, when converting from radians to degrees, remember on our unit circle how a full trip around the circle, starting at the positive x-axis, is 360 degrees around. And 360 degrees around corresponds to 2 pi radians. So this can be used as a conversion factor because they're equal to one another. So if I want to convert from radians to degrees, I'm going to take the radian measure that I'm given, 2 pi over 9, and multiply by the conversion factor. We're always going to put what we want to have in the end on top. So we want degrees on top, and what we don't want to have anymore on the bottom. So now I'm going to simplify, and when I multiply these together, you can use your calculator to do that, but notice I've got a 2 pi on top of this fraction and a 2 pi on the bottom of this fraction because I'm multiplying them together. 2 pi divided by 2 pi here is going to end up giving me a 1. So I can simplify that. Also, I'm going to have a 360 divided by 9. 360 divided by 9 is 40. Because 9 goes into 360 40 times. So I have 40 degrees for my answer. And y'all please excuse my pets, they're fighting in my room while I'm trying to record this. For number 27, I have to solve for x. And in order to solve for x in this equation, I'm going to need to get x alone. As you can see, that's a difficulty right now, but one thing that I can do is simplify the fraction that I see. Notice that there's a x minus 4 in the numerator and in the denominator. So I can simplify that because when you divide anything by itself, you get a 1. X minus 4 and x minus 4. So we get x plus 3 equals 0, which means that x equals -3 for this one. Next up, we're asked to convert to standard form. Remember, standard form for a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c. What we have right now is vertex form. So if we want it to look like this, we've got to get rid of the parentheses. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to multiply 2x plus 3 times 2x plus 3, because that's what 2x plus 3 squared is. And then after I do that, I'm going to subtract 5 from it. Well, 2x plus 3 times 2x plus 3 is 4x squared when I multiply the first terms together, plus a 6x when I multiply the outers, plus another 6x when I multiply the inners, plus a 9 when I multiply the lasts. And then I'm going to subtract 5 from that. When I simplify this and combine like terms, I'm going to get 4x squared plus 12x plus 4. And so that is my standard form. We've got a is 4x squared plus b is 12x plus 4. Number 29, the velocity of an object subject to an acceleration a is given by the equation below, where v sub 0 is the initial velocity and t is the time. And we just want to solve to get a alone. If we want a alone, we've got to undo what's being done to a right now. And you can see that we have a t multiplied times it, and then a v sub 0 added to it. So we want to start with the thing that's furthest away from the a, and then move closer as we finish simplifying or solving for it. So first I'm going to subtract v sub 0 from both sides. That's going to give me v minus v sub 0 equals, this simplifies to give us 1, a times t. I still want to get a by itself. The only thing that's stopping me is this t. Since it's multiplied, I'm going to undo the multiplication with quick division. And t divided by t is 1, so I have a equals v minus v sub 0 divided by t. Pause the video real quick if you need to write that work down, because I'm going to erase it so I can do number 30. In number 30, I need to divide. We've learned two ways to divide. We can divide using synthetic division or long division. Most people prefer synthetic division, but it can be a little bit tricky with this problem. And the reason it's tricky is because of this 2. If you're going to do synthetic division here, you've got to make sure you divide your final answer by 2. You're also going to have to put in your box whatever you get if you set this divisor equal to 0. So in this case, you're going to put -1/2 in the box for synthetic division. I'm going to show you how to do long division first. I remember a lot of us did not like this very much, but basically we just need to decide what needs to go right here so that what's in this circle times a 2x is equal to a 6x cubed. So if you think for just a second, you'll realize that that's a 3x squared. 3x squared times 2x is 6x cubed, and then I also multiply 3x squared times the 1. 3x squared times 1 is 3x squared. So I have a plus 3x squared. Next I have to subtract everything. And when I say everything, that means the 6x squared, or sorry, that should be a cubed. The 6x cubed and the 3x squared. 6x cubed in blue minus the 6x cubed in yellow gives me 0. And negative 11x squared minus 3x squared is negative 14x squared. A lot of people subtract those wrong and make mistakes. Next up, we have to bring down the next term, which is negative 47x, and continue the same process. So what could I put in this pink bubble here? So when I multiply the pink bubble times 2x, I get negative 14x squared. Well, that's going to be a negative 7x. So I'm going to multiply those. Negative 7x times 2x gives me negative 14x squared. On that one I thought I was recording, but apparently I wasn't, so you missed a few steps in there. But we've gotten to the last one. I'll show you how to do synthetic division also. So we subtract these and we get a 0. So my final answer for number 30 is 3x squared minus 7x minus 20. Now let's look at how to do that with synthetic division. Pause the video if you need to. I'm going to erase what I just wrote. We discussed how we'd need a negative 1/2 in the box. And hopefully you remember that you're going to write your coefficients, making sure you go down just 1 degree at a time. And then for synthetic division, you're going to bring down the first coefficient, multiply it times what's in the box. So 6 times negative 1/2 is going to be a negative 3, and you're going to write it right underneath the next number. And you're going to add those two numbers together. So negative 11 plus negative 3 gives you negative 14. Now you're going to multiply negative 14 times negative 1/2, and that gives you a positive 7, which you're going to write under the negative 47, and this gives you a negative 40. You're going to multiply negative 40 times negative 1/2, and that's going to give you a positive 20. Add those together and you get a 0. The last number is your remainder. If your remainder is 0, we know that what we divided by is a factor of the original polynomial. So 2x plus 1 is a factor of 6x cubed minus 11x squared minus 47x minus 20. But if you notice, this does not have the same coefficients as this did. You remember to solve for x here I had to divide by 2. Well, I have to now go through and divide all of these coefficients by 2, which is a weird thing about synthetic division. But that's how you're going to get 6 divided by 2 is 3 for your x squared, 14 divided by 2 is 7 for your x, and negative 40 divided by 2 is negative 20. So that's how you do synthetic division. Pause the video, I'm going to do number 31 after I erase what I just wrote. We used completing the square in a couple of earlier problems with circles and vertex form. Remember, to complete the square we have to take the number that's beside the linear term, in this case the x here, and we've got to divide it by 2 and then square it. Well, -3 divided by 2 is -1.5. And -1.5 when you square it is 2.25. So the number that completes the square here is 2.25, which feels strange, but it's correct. You could also write that as 9/4 if you wanted to. Number 32 says the table shows how many minutes 4 patients waited to see the doctor, and it wants us to find a recursive formula to describe the data. Now, for this recursive formula, we're going to focus mainly on this second row of information. And this one, if you notice, doesn't have a regular pattern. From 2 to 5 is adding 3. From 5 to 11, we're adding a 6, and from 11 to 23, we're adding 12. So it's +3, +6, +12. That's not an arithmetic sequence because we're not adding the same thing each time, and it's not a geometric sequence because we're not multiplying by the same thing each time. So this one is kind of tricky. What do I have to do to the first term, 2, to get to the second term, or the one after it, or the one after that? Well, when you have multiple choice, this is a lot easier to determine, but basically what we're doing is we are multiplying the previous term times 2 and then adding 1. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 1 is 11. 11 times 2 is 22, plus 1 is 23. So we're going to do, to get the next one, we take 2, multiply it times the one that came before it, and then add a 1 to it. So that's your answer for number 32.